class, it's Christy. I'm going to do a short presentation here for evidence-based practice, the implications and application, which is what we are moving forward to do. You will have your presentations here next month in April. And let's just kind of do an introductory here. This kind of aligns with your book, but I want to help give you that feeling of a lecture with it and help you to focus in on how to study these concepts and what this all means. Let's move on to the next slide. For each of the following concepts, I want you to use critical thinking to describe how or why it is important to nursing, patient care, or nursing theory and research. One thing I've been saying from day one, and I can't emphasize enough, is that these are not to be merely definitions, but rather look at the words, understand them, be able to define them, and distinguish between the terms, but then use them to apply. Everything we do as nurses has meaning and purpose. So let's stop and reflect. What does that mean? What is meant by nursing always has meaning and purpose? Recall, we briefly talked in class last week about therapeutic communication. Again, does this mean that we're just nice and that our communication promotes some sort of therapy? Okay, one of our concepts here is nursing theory. Review and tie in the concepts in the class activities and assignments from weeks 1, 3, and 5. Again, your book goes into great detail, and I never ever want to stand up in front of you in class and literally just repeat pages out of the book. You are an adult learner, and you can read the book, and you can outline, and that's what I want you to do, is to outline. And anything that we do in class, whether it's an assignment or it's an interactive activity, kind of just brings all that together. It helps you with that application piece. Remember, I'm challenging you to kind of think outside the box and be a little uncomfortable, if you will, from your quote comfort zone. PRD to me is actually kind of fun. Professional role development is exactly that. It's application. It's saying, hey, look, we've got these different scenarios. We've got these different people, these different type patients and their support system. And how do we approach this? What are some of our foundational values? And that's one reason why you had the nursing theory assignment, and then of course all the readings and the supplemental resources that talk about contemporary nursing, the evolution of nursing. Recall, we can't know where we're going and what we're going to do if we can't appreciate where we came from. So embedded in nursing theory is the centrality of what we call the meta paradigm. And it consists of the 4 concepts that work together synergistically. Without one, we have a break in that chain. So that includes the nurse's presence, obviously the patient or person, environment, and health. So nursing theory provides that foundation for nursing practice. A theory answers the questions, what is this and how does it work? Although a theory is based on observation of facts, the theory itself is not a fact. Let me say that again. The theory itself is not a fact. A theory is a way of viewing phenomena, which is plural, or a phenomenon, which is singular, which is that reality, right? What we see. And it defines and explains how these concepts are related or linked. We talked briefly last week about, like, do we, engage in deductive thinking, inductive thinking? I don't want to go that far in depth just yet. And like I said before, you also have an evidence-based practice standalone course. So hopefully this does focus on that clinical application part and what is meaningful. So engaging the quote audience. Culturally competent care, this is another concept, And again, tying in from in-class activities and assignments from week 2 and 4. Initially, what pops out of my mind is when we thought about ethics and values, and I had you do that EI activity, or emotional intelligence. I had you kind of do your own learning inventory, and now you can use that to move forward as you study in any of the courses in the program. And that it also helps you to, like I say, know thyself, to help you understand other relationships, whether that's an intimate, like engaging with a significant other, working relationships, friendships, and absolutely when you work with your patient, because you are going to be the teacher for that patient. You're going to ensure they understand the plan of care, they understand orders, and really, if you haven't heard it yet, planning for discharge begins at the time of admission, because a lot of those admitting questions are setting you up to know how to approach the patient, what they have when they go home, their resources, and what those needs are going to be, and how we best approach them. If you understand yourself better in terms of, are you kinesthetic? Do you like to be touching? I mean, right now you might be listening to this and looking at the slides while you're walking around your room holding on to like one of those, pharmaceutical drug rep balls, something like that. Are you verbal? Are you talking out loud? Do you want to hear me talking? Or are you auditory, which is kind of aligns with that? Or do you like to just be left alone and read? There's nothing negative about any of those. We tend to kind of like a mix of them. And, if you take an entirely online course, that's where we have to challenge you, and we try to do the YouTube videos, we do the voiceover lectures, and then of course you have the reading. I'm always going to require a book of some sort, whether it's a supplemental book or a required text, because to me, going to school and not being required to have an updated, relevant book, it's like asking you to be a nurse without a stethoscope. I just don't see that. But I'm happy to provide supplemental material, which I think I'm doing. I think relevant videos that are important, relevant articles, and then of course what you're starting to learn, and you're going to continue to build on this, is you go out into the resources and get additional articles or look at another video. We live in a time where these technological resources, we didn't have as much even say 10 years ago. So I definitely encourage you to do that. So culturally competent care, again, and now this ties into your transcultural course. How to approach that individual patient, and then how to approach them within the context of their environment. So applying the nurse theorist, I asked you to do that assignment, again, to tie in those concepts, but to also start to self-reflect on, gosh, when I look at some of these theorists, where do I really connect with her? And I can say her, because most, I know that we're having a couple that have evolved, but predominantly our nurse theorists were females. So for instance, the culturally competent care is based on Dr. Madeline Ledinger's work with culture, and it defines, I'm going to have you fill in the blank there from your book. Now you might say to me, well, what the heck? Why are you making me define this? But like I just said in the slide before, or excuse me, the first slide, you cannot apply what you don't know. You do have to kind of know these definitions. You do have to be able to distinguish and know how they differ, how they're similar, but then we apply them. So looking, say, at Watson's 10 caring processes. Caring, by the way, is central, right? I don't care if it's Watson, if it's Nightingale, if it's Virginia Henderson. Caring it's a centrality of what we do. So I'm going to show you the grid here that's literally copied from your textbook, but we're going to look at the 10 caring processes, and I want you to ask yourself, how can I demonstrate caring? That's a pretty tough construct, right? But this is a great example where yes, go ahead and take a look at that and know the 10 processes. I don't necessarily ever want to test you specifically on Watson's 10 caring processes, but understand them because caring is so important. And when you look at each of those, you can say to yourself, hey, I get where this makes sense. You know, helping a patient I just had last week in clinical, this all makes sense. Or when I apply to doing a concept map in preparation for another clinical. Some two key concepts, evidence-based practice and nursing research. Are these the same? Oh, shame on me, Dr. Christie. I just found a typo. That's read, not resad. I'm usually pretty good about that, but I'm not going to correct it here right now. Well, maybe I can because I'm recording it. But let's see if I can. I don't know. Okay, we'll try it. I have to make sure the voiceover, you know, that we are compliant for the different modalities that you might learn. So we'll see if this works out. But evidence-based practice is see your course content in Canvas. And again, sample articles and resources, and then read that portion of content from chapter 4. So here we go again. Professional nurses provide care based on research evidence that, remember, what's the purpose? Think of the very first introductory slide, my title page. And the nursing research is the inquiry. It's the investigation or the exploration of nursing concepts or problems through a formal process. Nursing research is essentially evidence-based practice. It equals evidence-based practice, not it is. There is a distinction there, but it supports theory. So here's a next point of reflection. Theory guides research. It guides it. Without it, we are merely philosophizing. What do you think I mean by this claim? Here's that good old word, utilization, utility. Research utilization refers to using the evidence-based practice. Research can be used in the practice of nursing if it has a strong evidence base. Now, this does come from your book, but I will caution you because there are those things in practice that we do. You will hear it all the time, and it's documented in the literature. It's either, how many of you have heard of the term like something happens of unknown etiology? We don't know. Or it's idiopathic. We're not really sure. There are those things out there. We don't know why it works, how it works, but it does. And that's exactly the kind of thing that generates research. Someone says, that's a good question. Let's see if we can find out more about it. Although not all nurses are prepared to perform research, all of us are responsible for using it. What's meant by this last statement? That we're all responsible for using it even though we don't all generate it. Recall in class the difference between a PhD and a practice doctorate. What is their role in the research process and utilization? A research finding or outcome have, quote, significance if there is no statistical significance. You will find when you read your articles as you move along that if there's a hypothetical question and they use quantitative approach and they found at the end, hey, look, our question, it did not find statistical significance based on alpha set at 0.05, which is probably the most common in nursing research. Does that automatically mean that we don't have clinical significance? And what do you think I mean by clinical significance? Again, is this applicable? Could it inform change? Does nursing care, hint, hint, if a finding could affect 5 people, even though it may not affect 200 people? Analytical reading. Okay, now we're kind of moving along. We have the evidence-based practice, we have the nursing research. Now the analytical reading is also kind of known as critical review. Why do we do this? It enables you to. This ties right into that critical review exercise that you just completed. That's why you address those questions. Did the author generalize findings? Did the author or authors talk about limitations of the study? By the way, every single article should have limitations. If it doesn't, this is one of those critical evaluations where you say, you know what, I think you just lost your credibility. Why? Because we can't do blanket statements. Research, if I can do a takeaway before you do get into evidence-based practice or nursing research courses, research will never, ever, ever prove anything. So if you see studies prove, our findings prove, that's irresponsible. They can show the likelihood, they can show the probability, they can definitely bring attention to the clinical or the statistical significance, but nothing is ever proven. So how do you feel about parsing an article out of order to evaluate its applicability and its appropriateness to the setting or clinical scenario? Tie these steps that you just did in this activity that was due, because recall, I had you kind of skip around a little bit and read different sections of the article, and then tie these steps into your group evidence-based practice project and how you will ultimately present it to the class. The end. Short, sweet, and simple. I will also be sending you a couple more questions, kind of scattered out the next, or the remaining weeks prior to your last exam. And I will work on a slide for you for the next set. We start to kind of just bring in that whole promoting health, again, emphasizing communication, that therapeutic communication, patient education. And then we kind of end the course with just bringing it all together with, again, leading and managing. Leadership and management is essentially that professional role development, and you are learning how to develop that, no pun intended. Again, there's my contact information. Reach out anytime. Otherwise, again and again and again, there is the Q&A form in Canvas. I can't stress that enough. That is a great place for general questions. If you do have individual questions, of course, reach out to me, and I will respond to you, email, phone number. We can set up a Zoom session. But that Q&A form is a great place, especially if there appears to be any kind of collective questions, concerns, or kudos, but things that are working. As we wrap up the semester, we're pretty much entering midterm here, and then we have spring break, and we'll come in and wrap it up here in April. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye now.